A very good evening to you from Ballinskelligs, County Kerry, Ireland, from the home of my dear friend Michael Quirk, sitting next to the live fireplace with logs of wood for it to burn and give out heat. Now, this area of Ireland is well known for its storytelling, and they call the storyteller a shanachie. So you have me as your shanachie or storyteller for a few minutes to relate to your childhood train journeys, which are filled with special memories. Each one of us have a preferred mode of travel, going for our everyday work, leisure, as we journey on our pilgrimage of life. In my mind, I pleasantly find myself singing the song by the Seekers called Morning Town Ride. And the lyrics start with something like this: Train whistle blowing makes a sleepy noise. Underneath their blankets go all the girls and boys, rocking, rolling, riding out along the bay, all bound for Morningtown, many miles away. Driver at the engine, fireman rings the bell, Sandman swings the lantern to show that all is well. Rockin', rollin', riding out along the bay, all bound for Morningtown, many miles away. Now, the steam engine driver in this case refers to my late paternal grandfather, Alan Jacob, or Alan Papa as we called him, and the fireman to that of my late dad. Growing up as a boy in the 80s Madras, now known as Chennai in India, we did have steam engines back in the day. Alan Papa was a steam engine driver, and his route was from Shurano to Quilon in the state of Kerala. As Uncle Alroy reminded me, Papa would have a big line box which had his daily provisions of sugar, coffee, cookies, bananas, and his lunch tiffin, receipts, and even his small savings of coins. Normally there was a boy who would pick up the line box and place it at the station, where it was refilled by Papa regularly. Also, the money that Stella Nana gave him for snacks and coffee, he would put away in his line box and bring it home just before Christmas. Speaking of the small savings of coins, my Auntie Miriam, or Sweetie as she's known to us, Alan Papa would open the box, the line box, and empty the small mountain of cash coins. They'd be dropped on the floor, which my aunt, my late dad, and their siblings, other uncles and aunts, would separate and count the money and hand them over to Stella Nana. And she in turn would share it with the six of them as part of their Christmas treat. Now picture the scene, as Uncle Rex reminds us, that Alan Papa would be disturbed any time in the morning, noon, or even at 2 or 3 a.m. by the call boy, and he would arrive with a note for him to drive the steam train at short notice. He was always punctual with the starting and finishing times. Alan Papa would have just enough time to pick up some black coffee made of the wooden fire by my Stella Nana, and he would head off to the shed to collect the steam engine from the depot and take it to connect with the rest of the train compartments. And Cousin Alan Jude also drew my attention that our Alan Papa would take a handkerchief, or something like this, and he would tie it around his head, although I'm not very good at doing it, but it's something like that. He would do so he would tie it around his head before he got into the steam engine driver department. It was hot and sweaty in there, and the handkerchief could have been a cooling support rather than just giving him a cool look. On one particular occasion, Uncle Alro reminded me of how he even managed to drop off his hold all to their family home, which was close enough to the terminus. I don't think modern day travel would even comprehend that thought and trains reaching their destinations on time. Now, what is a hold all? A hold all is a vinyl holder which stores, you can store pillows and sheets, and they will be used as sleeping goods when the steam train is pulled in overnight at the running bungalows. On several occasions, Papa would take my late dad and uncles Rex and Alroy on trips and onto the engine one at a time in between each station, and they would stay overnight at the running bungalows. And that's where the hold all comes in useful for sleeping on them. We need to bear in mind when we speak of Kerala, its weather could regularly be hit with heavy monsoon rains, and steam engine drivers had to use open steam engines for all seasons. Can you imagine the scene with the driver who's located on the right side of the engine? He would have the heavy cold rain hitting his face on one side, while on the other side the heavy heat coming off the coals that would hit him on his left side. I can imagine it's a bit like putting in loads of wood to create that heat from this fireplace, and at the same time letting in the windows next to me, which fully open here in the Skelligs for the storm to hit me coming in from the Atlantic Ocean close by. Just to say, in contrast to the train guards, like Alan Papa's brother, Edgar Uncle, also his nephew Uncle Douglas, and others who wore their Sunday best, the steam engine drivers, like Papa, would have to wear basic clothing since they had heavy soot would stain their clothing. Stella, Nana, and the women at home would have had to wash the heavy soot off their clothes. Also, there was no electric irons in their times. It was coal irons to iron their clothes. I guess it would be similar to what people in the coal mines in the north of England and other places experienced. Equally, I was told my late mum's dad, Claude Papa, would travel in a small carriage of his own, since he had a top job at the railways. Can you imagine someone today having any train compartment all to themselves? Now, one special journey comes to mind growing up as a child of 8 with mum and dad. We had a family tradition to travel annually to a Maori shrine, Our Lady of Ballinskelligs as it's known as, who is the patroness of good health. This is located in South India in the state of Tamil Nadu. As a wee boy grown up, it was the highlight of my school calendar year. As my brother Sean called to mind recently, he would remind us that Dad would receive his pay packet and a last minute decision would be made to book train tickets for the next day. And it meant travelling in sardine packed unreserved seats for 10 of us, which I will share in a few moments what that was like. But however, as part of the last minute preparations, I can still visualize Mum, our maid, and some of us preparing the gorgeous chapatis, dal, dried meat curries, and then Dad and other siblings packed them in neat newspaper parcels. We would quietly sneak in a pack of cards and some alcohol for the adults, so that the journeys also had some time for entertainment. Having a large family to cart around wouldn't have been easy for my late parents. Sometimes on our long train journeys to Ballinskelligs, we also had other people, like our mum's mother, Bomi Nana, and our disabled Uncle Earl, or Uncle Buffy as he was known to us. We would take all our paraphernalia from Palaram train station and get off at Egmore. Now, my dad had a secret mission unknown to us at that time. At the station prior to Egmore called Chetput, my brother Sean rejigged my memory as to how our dad would disembark at Chetput station and meet us up later on at Egmore station. He headed for the station train intended for Nagapattinam, and he would make it a point to communicate with the coolies or the porters who were in charge to get the train ready for the long overnight journey. The next thing we know is that when we arrive at Egmore station, there's a compartment in the unreserved carriage which has a towel placed on it. Usually they're unreserved seats. However, we had seats to sit on, and we could depart in comfort for the long distance trains to Nagapattinam or Negbetam, as us Anglo-Indians called it. As usual at the start of the journey, the night prayers would be said by the family. It was usually the rosary and some additional family prayers. After which dinner would be taken, and then playing cards, entertainment would commence, with plenty of jokes to go with it, before we got a few hours of sleep on the train. We would normally be woken up at a particular station called Villapuram, where early morning aromas of teas, coffees, breakfast items would tantalize our senses. After brushing of teeth and waking up, we would normally be approaching the three-quarters of the way stage, and the train would come to a long halt at Thiruvarur station. At this point, the electric engine would wave goodbye, and it would be replaced by a steam engine. I used to love the hoot of the steam engine trains, and I still do. As children, we would be excited as Dad would encourage us to witness this marvelous spectacle of the steam replacing the electric engine unfolding before our very eyes. Also, on the odd occasion, the steam engine driver would allow us to come and see the coal being filled into the fireplace for it to burn. Boy, that was a spectacle. And as we were watching this spectacle, we would have glasses of hot, freshly ground coffee or tea while we were enthralled in all of it. Sometimes, as kids, we would drink the coffee so slowly so that the hired fancy glasses would not be returned. Instead, smuggled quietly into our cases. However, upon arrival back home, ironically, the glass tumbler too would break, and we can still hear our late mum saying, "Ill-gotten things go the ill-gotten way." She was a stickler for her principles and key phrases. For this last part of the journey, for some unknown reason, the carriage became overcrowded as local workers would pile into the compartment and get on for the last half hour of our journey to Nekbatan. When we disembarked at our final destination, it was usually around 5:30 a.m. or so. Many of us who were half asleep would always look forward to a special yellowish coloured milk called masala milk, and it felt so satisfying at the completion of an overnight train journey. Train journeys can bring unexpected surprises. My sister Andrea was going to meet her fiancé Harish in Bangalore, and she prepared his favourite crab curry to take him. The preparations took a little longer than expected, and she got to Chennai Central only to find the train pulling away. As someone said, "Better luck next time, Andrea." However, when she did go on the following train to Bangalore, she had to travel in an unreserved carriage, and it seemed that it was standing room only for her and many others. However, at the start of her journey, a lady had what looked like an epileptic seizure and fell to the floor in the carriage. And Andy requested that the people move away from that lady, and she massaged her neck and gave the person something to hold in her hand. Now, the moment the lady recovered, the people in the unreserved compartment congratulated Andrea and almost knighted her to doctorhood and ensured she had the best seat in this unreserved compartment. Also, on another occasion, I remember when three of us were going to Ballinskelligs by train, my sister Maria, her newlywed husband Rexy, and myself. It was dark and early morning, and we had to change trains at Mayavaram. And guess what? We almost missed our transfer as we were half asleep. In the confusion of trying to take our bags at the last minute, my brother-in-law Rexy managed to swap one of his rubber slippers with that of the old man next to us. So at that point it was 2 old slippers for him journey to the holy shrine of Ballinskelligs. What a sight on poor Rexy's feet. One other special journey that I remember was the train journey from Madras to Calicut, which is my late dad's hometown in Kerala. What I recall was the change in scenery from the more dryness and ruggedness of Tamil Nadu to the more greenery coated trees of Kerala. The language kept interchanging between Tamil and Malayalam en route to Kerala. Also, we experienced the rapid change of seasons between the two states, as the presence of a huge mountain terrain called the Western Ghats would always bring more rain to Kerala by virtue of its location. A bit here like Cork and Kerry. On the train journey, there were vendors coming around shouting at the top of their voice, "Chai, chai, chai." And they also sold a special kind of banana. We call it the Kerala banana. And boy, did they have such a sweet, juicy taste, whether they were raw or they were cooked. There was always a vendor at Shurano station, the place where Alan Papa used to drive his train, and I loved to buy the Kerala bananas from there. The food taste, textures and colours would also change the moment you travelled from one state to another. Returning back into Tamil Nadu, it was the Thai sadam, the curd rice, or the tamarind rice, both packed in a banana leaf, that were heavenly dishes that caught my attention. Also, the toilet arrangements of the train were either Indian style, where you sat on your haunches, or a Western style toilet where you sat on the toilet seats. Now, in the long distance fast trains, we rarely had steam engine trains. Growing up, it was more electric or diesel trains, travelling on a meter gauge. Today, India has broadened its gauge system into broad gauge, and sadly, steam trains have had their day. One thing the British left India is the vast extensive train journey systems across the country, even if their original intention wasn't altruistic, as it was seen as a means to an end. The means being the need to export the best food, spices and textile goods, and the end result being to ship the goods back to industrialised Britain way back in the early 1900s. I'm sure each one of us have our train journeys and stories to tell, and I look forward to hearing your own tales as well. I believe every child needs to be given opportunities to travel on exciting journeys of life, as it will always expand their horizons in the future years to come. Thank you for your kind listening and offering engagement with the short storytelling Shanaki experience of being on fascinating train journeys in India. I hope you'll be able to share your own with future generations to come. A special thank you to my good friend Michael Kirk for offering me his special home here in Ballinskelligs, County Kerry in Ireland. P.S. For those of you who do not know much about the Skelligs, it's a beautiful hewn rock-like structure whose foundations were laid in the Atlantic Ocean close by, way back in the 6th century, by Irish monks from the Celtic Christianity tradition. And they lived in these beehive huts, and they survived eating fish and birds from the ocean. A few years ago, the Star Wars films used it for filming scenes in 2 films, The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. It is a popular World Heritage Site where the mountains and the Atlantic Ocean meet. Next stop, America. So that's just a taster. More to come on another time. Thank you. God bless.